Okay, so we are going to discuss movement in and out of a cell. So, movement of molecules in cells exists in or occurs in three different processes. The first one is diffusion, then osmosis, then active transport. So, as it is said here, diffusion is the net movement of particles from a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration down a concentration gradient as a result of random movement. So basically for diffusion is the movement of whenever particles move from a region of high concentration to a region of lower concentration because of a concentration gradient. Concentration gradient occurs when there is more particles on one side of something, or on one side of a volume, or on one side of a cell membrane. Whenever there is difference in the amount of particles on one part or between two parts, that is, there is more on one part than the other, then there exists a concentration gradient. So what happens in diffusion? We have random movement of particles, usually fluids, that is air or gas, and liquids. So particles move from a region of high concentration to a region of lower concentration through random movements. As long as there is a difference in concentration, particles are going to do whatever they can to fill up the room. So that is diffusion. And then we have osmosis. So the diffusion of water molecules from a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration through a selective permeable membrane. So the difference between diffusion and osmosis is that, well, in this case, water molecules move from a region of higher salt or sugar concentration to a region of lower salt or sugar concentration. Whenever we have two regions and a selective, or the most important word, through a selective permeable membrane. So whenever we have two areas, or whenever we have two rooms separated by a selective permeable membrane, whenever we have two rooms separated by a selective permeable membrane like this, and then in here we have water both here and here. So let's say these are water molecules. We also have water molecules here. So when you have water molecules on this side and water molecules on this side, but we also have sugar molecules or glucose molecules, more glucose molecules on this side. We have more glucose molecules on this side than we have on this side. What is going to happen is that these water molecules are going to start moving from this region of higher or from this region of lower concentration to this region of higher concentration of solutes or sugar or salt. So whenever we have an imbalance in the number of sugar molecules between a selective permeable membrane, water molecules start moving from the region of lower solute concentration to a region of higher solute concentration. This process is called osmosis. This is where it differs with diffusion. Diffusion usually involves particles moving from a region of higher concentration of the same particles to a region of lower concentration. Now, active transport. So as it is read, the movement of ions in and out of a cell through a membrane from a region of their lower concentration to a region of their higher concentration against the concentration gradient using the energy released from respiration. So here where it differs with osmosis and diffusion is that when you have ions or sugar molecules, those ions, when there is a concentration gradient, as I had said below, a concentration gradient is when you have more particles on one side than the other between a selectively permeable membrane. So when we have more ions on this side than this side, it creates a concentration gradient. So these ions start moving from this side to this side, not by diffusion, no, not by random movement like in diffusion, but by using energy from ATP, or by using energy from respiration. ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. So by using energy from respiration. So now the only difference is that these ions are going to be moving by themselves using energy from ATP or using energy from respiration, from a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration. So we have factors which affect the rate at which diffusion occurs. The factors which affect the rate at which diffusion occurs are first, temperature. So how does temperature affect diffusion? Well, in temperature, when you have, for example, hot tea and cold tea, and then we put sugar in hot and cold tea, of course the sugar in hot tea is going to dissolve faster than the sugar in cold tea. Why? Because the particles or the sugar particles in the hot tea has a higher amount of energy, and thus is moving at a faster rate than the sugar in cold tea. And then we have volume. So how does volume affect the rate of diffusion? Well, it depends. Well, for example, we have here a cup of water and a big block of sugar. So the volume of this big block of sugar is very high, or therefore it is going to take a long time for this big block of sugar to dissolve. It is going to take a very long time for this sugar to dissolve. But when you have a smaller volume, in the same space, it is going to be faster for this sugar to dissolve. Another thing is surface area. So surface area affects diffusion in a way where, for example, we have big blocks of sugar here like this, and smaller blocks of sugar like this of the same mass. So if these smaller particles of sugar and these big blocks of sugar have the same mass, then therefore they have the same number of particles in them. But these smaller ones are going to diffuse faster than this one. Why? Because these have got more exposed area for diffusion to occur. They have got a larger exposed area for diffusion to occur than these big ones. Therefore, these are going to dissolve faster.